Good morning, everyone. This is updates for September 4, 2022, day 193 of the war, end of the day update. This will be pretty short update as there is things kind of developing slowly on Kherson Bridgehead. Nothing really earth-shattering or breakthrough there, but we'll discuss it in depth once we get there. So let's just start quickly with the walk through the front line, starting from the very north. So this is the sort of adversarial activities along the state border continue. Basically, artillery shelling, commander group actions on both sides. Everything kind of goes, with exception of actual military action, large scale action. Now let's move to Kharkiv section of the front line. Things here are more or less stable. No small scale attacks as we have seen here. Typically, everything is more or less the same. Now let's move to Izyum Bridgehead. There were several Russian attacks. There are nothing this is not major attacks, just kind of like regular, like a broken record on schedule attacks in attempt to kind of create a breach in Ukrainian defenses and move towards Slovyansk. As you can see, there's this Krasnopilya Dolina villages, Bogorodichne, and then Russian troops trying to completely capture this forest here. They did not have any success, so things more or less the same. As there was report today that Ukrainian troops captured this village Ozerne here, as you can see. This is actually, I would say it's Ukrainian propaganda. What this was is basically, we don't know how many, 10 or less Ukrainian soldiers crossed the river, went to Ozerne, took pictures and moved back. The point is that the Russian troops did not have anything there, and that's why it was possible. Because as you can imagine, the front line is long, everybody's stretched, so they have only strongholds in the key locations, like for example, Stary Karavan, Svetohirsk, and something similar could have been done with probably this village Shurovo here. At the same time, this is nothing major, basically totally empty action that doesn't lead to anything, just pure propaganda. And we would say, which is propaganda is misleading Ukrainian population and just misleading everyone generally. So hopefully that explains what was going on there. Now let's move to North Donbass section of the front line. The northern section of the North Donbass front line is more or less quiet. The attacks are continue in Soledar, in Bakhmut, all typical areas. Then Zaitsevo, Kodyma, Russian troops, Wagner mercenaries specifically, still trying to squeeze Ukrainian troops out of the outskirts of Kodyma, which it looks like takes them forever. And then relatively new direction of Russian attacks from this in their northwestern direction, with kind of idea to potentially breach the front line here and kind of capture Bakhmut by creating sort of threat of encirclement here in Bakhmut. This is definitely far away from any kind of completion or success. This is just kind of like a revelation of Russian command thought. Otherwise, front line more or less stable here. Russian troops did not gain any ground to our understanding here. Now let's move to central Donbass front line, which is straight west of Donetsk. Here, situation is more or less standard attacks out of Pisky area. Basically, Russian troops are trying to develop this initial breach in Ukrainian defenses and kind of get into into the area so that they can actually move without any problem. Basically, how to say, I'm a little bit lacking English words, but get into the operational rear of Ukrainian troops. Basically, there is no any kind of engineered defensive positions, and basically create some kind of encirclement around Avdiivka at first. no really much movement there. As you can see, this is from August 21. Things remain more or less the same. The similar attacks at Vodiane, Opitne. Then Russian troops gained a little bit ground here. They are literally on the outskirts of Pervomaysk at this point, and they still did not capture this tiny village Nevitske. So things more or less it's a sort of snail speed type of attack progress here. Now let's move south. Let's see what's going on at the Zaporizhia front line. Things here are more or less quiet. As we mentioned yesterday, 42nd Division has been transferred out of this for some time. So as you can see, 19th Division is totally stretched here. So there is no ability to do any offensive action unless there are more Russian units, but that's not based on our information. Now let's finally move to Kherson Bridgehead, and let's discuss a little bit more in detail what's going on there. So sort of this slow motion Ukraine offensive continues, or we call it death by thousand cuts or million cuts, whatever you call it, where essentially Ukrainian troops are slowly moving. They suppressed Russian anti-air defenses and anti sort of rocket defenses, basically radar systems destroyed more or less, or at least destroyed enough to create open air to use Bayraktars, because as we discussed, Bayraktars are pretty weak tools. They only work when you don't have strong anti-air defenses, and Russia does have decent anti-air defenses. So that's why probably past couple months as you barely have seen any Bayraktars, and we were very skeptical about them as a tool for this war. However, in this situation, when Ukraine receives this HARM anti-radar missiles from the US, that allows Ukrainian troops to destroy Russian anti-air defensive systems, and that opens up air for Bayraktars, and then in turn they fly and they help tactically Ukrainian troops by destroying Russian heavy artillery, mostly 152 millimeter calibers, some tanks, and so on. So this is how it works, and because it's a slow process, that's why this whole attack is essentially also happening at snail speed as well. The only success that, or at least, I would say, public success that was clearly available is the capture or liberation of the village Vysokopilya here, and we believe also Olgyne has to be there in the package, but we'll discuss it later there. The reason this pretty poorly, I would say, organized attacks where Ukrainian troops were successful is because HIMARS system destroyed the supply of their artillery shells. And so we clearly see that from some of the information from Russian sources where they complain that there is no artillery support that it used to be. And that's a reason why Ukrainian troops are able to advance. So this destruction of the supply does work. It's not sort of complete. It's not like, okay, the oxygen has been cut off 100%, but Russian troops getting, let's say, 15 to 20% of the oxygen they used to get, and we mean by that artillery shells. So, and the situation will get sort of progressively worse, because as long as Ukraine receives those HIMARS rockets, it will continue hitting those bridges, which essentially bridges are done completely, and now the Ukrainian forces are more targeting Russian ferries, and this destruction of the Russian anti-air defenses allows now to send Bayraktars to spot and attack those ferries and help the HIMARS system to be sort of more precise, because we discussed this many times. Ukrainian side lacks equivalent over LAN-10, long distance, mid-altitude reconnaissance UAV. So that's really biggest challenge on Ukrainian side, and that's what hampers use of a lot of advanced artillery, long-range artillery systems that Ukraine at this point has, and actually has advantage over the Russian forces. So let's actually kind of jump in. So quickly here, nothing is really happening. As we mentioned before, Ukrainian troops put pressure here just to keep Russian troops engaged, and so the Russian command doesn't move reserves from here to this more dangerous situation. So this is more or less was successful. Now let's actually look what's going on here between Davydiv Brid and Snihurivka, and then we'll look at the northern situation. This was the first day of the offensive. As you can see, Ukrainian troops breached actually in unexpected location near Andriivka, and they started quickly moving and engulfing Russian troops here. This is the second day, so the Ukrainian troops managed to cross the road here in Bruskinsky. However, they were repelled by the Russian airborne units here. Then the sort of approach of Ukrainian command was, okay, let's just go to the pass of least resistance. So they moved to Kostromka, then Shasliva, and then Bazimen, as you can see here. So what we know at this point for the force that Ukrainian troops managed to, this is what we expected. Ukrainian troops managed to liberate this village Blogodativka, which probably looks like what Russian troops really evacuated, given the whole difficult situation. They just evacuated this Blogodativka. The only question is what's going on with this village Novogradneve in Mala Seydemenuha, which is, given the whole situation, is probably also going to be evacuated by Russian troops. But this is essentially Ukrainian troops created this like much bigger bridgehead, and then they will continue sort of pounding Russian defenses to move towards Berislav. So basically, the end goal is here. Well, Novokakhovka on the eastern side, Berislav is on the western side. So essentially, the pass is this one, right? So this, as we said, it may take entire months before they finally reach this Berislav, or who knows if Russian defenses really start to fall apart, then maybe there is opportunity for quick move. It's unpredictable. Now let's look what's going on in the northern section of this front line. So this was initial attack south of Vysokopilya. The frontal attacks here were repelled by Russian troops. Then what happened next is that essentially Russian units were encircled in Olgyne Vysokopilya. This is mostly 45th Special Forces Brigade. Ukrainian troops captured Arkhangelsk, and essentially these units were here in encirclement. Then what's happened next is that they tried to Russian troops tried to establish kind of link with the mainland here, which were not successful, those attempts. At the same time, Ukrainian troops breached Russian lines here and arrived at Khristianivka. We don't have any updates on this, but we assume that Ukrainian troops were stopped somewhere here. So this was as of 2nd, and then as of today, Russian troops evacuated this. Well, they managed to escape. Let's put this. That's probably a better way to say it. So, with the help of attack from the mainland, the troops that were encircled also did the breakthrough attempt and successfully broke through Ukrainian positions here. They were not even Ukrainian positions. It's just basically fire corridor that was created by Ukrainian troops, and they managed to get through that fire corridor and join the main body of the Russian troops here in Novopetrivka, Novovoznesensky area, which is essentially a new defensive line for the Russian troops here. So this essentially, this group was not liquidated. They joined the main Russian group, and now Russian troops have more or less new and more stable defensive line, more defensible situation, better defensive position. We're not saying that they're not going to be breached because as you can imagine, there is advantage in terms of number of troops for Ukrainian side, and now there is, as we discussed, there is a shortage of the Russian artillery support because there is a shortage of artillery shells on the Russian side. So, so this really means it's just a slow motion loss of this whole bridgehead essentially. So let's just go back to the kind of like general look. So this is, as we said, is going to be slow motion loss of it. We also don't have confirmation about situation in Zolota Balka, which used to be controlled by Russian troops. Some sources report that Russian troops actually evacuated and kind of like established front line, sort of like literally south of that Kherson and going and connecting to this huge lake, artificial lake. So this is kind of like where it stands. This whole so-called offensive is very sort of unconventional, unusual in terms of this is not a quick operation. It's going to be a very slow operation that will take us probably several weeks in our estimates. And at the same time, Russian command can still withdraw all of this group uh, at at their discretion at any moment. However, as Ukrainian troops kind of driving deeper and deeper into Russian defensive positions, opportunity to continue to have actually orderly withdrawal is diminishing for Russian troops, at least the ones that are on this, let's say, eastern and northeastern section of the bridgehead. The western remains, there's still viable opportunity to withdraw without loss of the equipment and soldiers. The this section, this part of the bridgehead, it's going to get to the point when it's going to be more and more difficult to withdraw in orderly fashion. However, we're still sort of away from that time, but it's definitely, as we said many times before, the writing is definitely on the wall. Okay, thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.